Before there were maps, there were two worlds. The world you know, and the shining realm of Kaf, hidden just beyond it. A kingdom of fairies and giants and magic. On the night he was born, an emperor 1,000 miles away woke from a dream. A black crow that stole his crown, and a bright hawk that flew out of the west to win it back. And the wise men said, "That hawk is a child, and he will shake the thrones of the world." That same night, the fairies of Kaf carried the sleeping baby across the sky. They blessed him, and they touched his eyes, so that nothing hidden could ever hide from him again. His name was Hamza. He would become the bravest champion the world had ever seen. Strong as a lion, a warrior against 100 armies, a prince who lost his heart to a princess, and at his side, the cleverest trickster who ever lived. Amar, a thief of 1,000 disguises, and the truest friend a hero ever had. Together, they crossed burning deserts and enchanted mountains. They faced sorcerers and giants and dragons and the demon armies of Kaf. They saw wonders no eye had ever seen. Thrones that flew, cities of gold, gardens that bloomed in the dark, courage, magic, love, and laughter. One of the greatest stories ever told, carried for 1,000 years. And now, it is yours. This is the dastan of Amir Hamza. You cannot stab a man who breaks maces on his chest, but the heart, children, the heart wears no armband. Bakhtak had failed with poison, and failed with axes, and failed with the law, beaten in open court, shamed before the throne he had thought to command. He did the thing that every schemer does when his cleverness runs dry. He went home to his mother. For every monster, children, has one. And his mother was a thing called Hell-cave Bano, ancient and sweet-voiced and terrible. She listened to their weeping and their rage, and when they were done she said the quiet words that armies could not say. "You cannot kill the man, so kill his joy, announce the wedding, and then let the girl die of it." And so they laid a trap that ran not on grief, but on happiness. The wedding of Hamza and Nigar was proclaimed for the week's end. Hamza's camp erupted. There was bunting in the streets of Ctesiphon, and the princess was led smiling down into the bridal apartments below the palace, and the door of that underground suite closed upon her face as the truth came down. 2 days passed, and word crept out. The princess is ill. 4 more, and a second word, colder. The princess is dead. Mourning broke over the city like weather. And Hamza, the man who had wrestled Landhar for 4 days and not fallen, was on the point of his own dagger inside a single minute. It took Landhar and Bahram both to pin his arms. For here, children, the tale shows you the one wound that Hamza could never guard. His mortal wound, always, was other people. But Amar took his friend's face in both hands, and this time he made no jokes. "Dead men have funerals, brother," he said. "So where is hers? First we bury my suspicion, and then, if I am wrong, I will sharpen the knife for you myself." So Amar went down into the mourning palace, and he watched for the one dry eye in all that grief. And he found it, Hell-cave Bano, whispering in the ear of the unwitting queen. He shadowed her, and in an empty gallery, an old woman came hobbling up to Bano to ask after the poor dead princess. And before Bano's cry could climb out of her throat, the strangler's cord was already out of that old woman's sleeve. For the old woman was Amar. He hid the body in the dry leaves, and then children. Then he became her. Wax and oils, the stoop of her back, the sweetness of her voice. And Hell-cave Bano was led down by a servant girl into the cellar suite, where Mihunigar sat alive among untouched food, her eyes cried empty. "Princess," said the old woman, and the voice slid, halfway through, into Amar's own. "Your funeral is upstairs, your wedding is postponed, and your bridegroom needs your handwriting before he opens his own ribs. One line, something only he would believe." Mihunigar took up the pen, and she did not look up as she wrote. "You strangled the old devil, didn't you?" she said. And Amar answered, "This is why I like you better than him." He would have asked questions. The note reached Hamza's hands, and you could watch the life travel back up his body as he read it. And then came the riposte. Hamza's whole command marched into the court, dressed in mourning black, to demand, with a courtesy that cut like a blade, the immediate funeral of their beloved princess. And the king, cornered by his own lie, had no choice but to produce a bier. So a box left the palace that evening, borne with all the honours of the state, and Amar walked before it, leading the grief, and the plotters buried their own witch beneath a mountain of royal mourning, while Mihunigar walked back into the daylight on the arm of the queen, and Bakhtak, standing at the graveside, understood exactly what it was that he was burying, and could not say one single word. But a viper does not die because you tread on its tail. 15 days now until the wedding, proclaimed once more, and Bakhtak, in ashes and ingenious, went out and bought men who had already lost their ears and their noses to old punishments. And he taught them their lines, and set them swinging the chain of justice. That was the sacred bell that no king in the world might ignore, and they cried out beneath it, "Hamza's taxmen did this to us. He gathers your tribute from the 7 lands, in his own name." The lie was not aimed at the king, children. It was aimed at Hamza's honour, and it struck square. The Hashemite vein stood out upon his brow, and by the Lord of the Kaaba he swore that he himself would go and gather the tribute of the 7 lands for the crown, and take no bride until the work was done. Nowshavan played at reluctance even as he stamped the mission through, and only Mihunigar and you and I could see the whole machine of it, the wedding sabotaged yet again, and this time by nothing but Hamza's own virtue. At the parting, at the curtain, she gave him no tears. 15 days they promised me, she said. I have learned what promises weigh in this place. So go. But Hamza, count what you promise, even to kings, especially to me. And the road to Greece was one long treachery, one for every stage. There was the guide Corin and his poisoned wells, and Hamza would touch no water that his men could not drink, and Amar, by the grace of Kizza, found the true water. There was the bathhouse built to collapse, that collapsed, with a certain poetry, upon its own architect. And there were Corin's rubies, confiscated. And then Corin, subtracted. In Greece proper, the King Farad'n turned to the faith and gratitude before Hamza had lifted a finger. And then he named his 3 torments. There was the serpent that had burned a whole province to ash, and Hamza put an arrow into each of its eyes, and then the sword into its heart, in a blackened land where the ash fell down like snow. There was the killer Moor, dispatched off in the wings by a cheerful, returning Landhauer, who came back with the head tucked under one arm. And there was the third thing, which the old king could not ask standing up, his daughter, Nahid Mariam. Hamza refused. His vow was whole, and he spoke Mihunigar's name aloud, and that refusal all but killed the old king with shame. His own brother had to wrestle the knife from his hand, and it was Amar, the pragmatist, who closed the trap that kindness had built. Alliances need blood, he argued, and Greece needs its honour back, and men break such vows every day. Leave the princess to me. So Hamza yielded half. The marriage was made, but he swore he would not touch his bride until Mihnigar was his wife. 2 weeks of courteous, careful distance, and as he left one of Corin's rubies upon Nahid's wrist, a decent man's guilt rendered into stone. And there she stood, alone upon the sea terrace, dignified and married and untouched. The saga will pay that debt one day, children, but not tonight. So the second wedding died more quietly than the first. No coffin this time, only a vow with another vow folded up inside it, sailing home the long way round. In Ctesiphon, a princess counted broken promises. In Greece, a bride counted stars. Sleep now, the lamp is low. And in Egypt, children. In Egypt, a pigeon was learning to carry letters. Remember the pigeon, for tomorrow I will tell you what it brought.